In the vast expanse of the cosmos, where stars are born and die in silence, there exists a place where the universe itself seems to speak. A region of space so enigmatic, it has been named the Whispering Nebula, not for the sound it makes, but for the voices it carries, voices that only one person can hear. Lyra, a starweaver with a gift as rare as the nebula itself, can hear these whispers. They are the songs of celestial bodies, the secrets of galaxies, and sometimes the echoes of those who have been lost. Today, Lyra stands on the edge of her greatest challenge. The Whispering Nebula, once a stable haven, has begun to unravel, its tendrils reaching out like a cosmic storm, threatening to consume entire star systems. But this isn't just a mission of duty for Lyra. It's deeply personal. Years ago, her brother vanished into the nebula, leaving behind only silence. Now, as she prepares to step onto her ship and face the unknown, the first whispers of the nebula brush her mind, stirring a mix of hope and dread. What will she find in the heart of the nebula, and will she finally uncover the truth about her brother's disappearance? This is the story of Lyra's journey through the stars, a tale of courage, mystery, and the unbreakable bond between the cosmos and those who dare to listen. Lyra's heart pounded as she guided her ship closer to the shimmering edge of the Whispering Nebula. Her brother's voice echoed in her mind, those final words he had spoken before vanishing into the void. "Trust the whispers," he had said, his tone both urgent and cryptic. Now, as her hands trembled on the controls, the weight of his warning pressed heavily on her. The nebula's ethereal glow seemed to pulse in rhythm with her racing thoughts, a silent reminder of the unknown that lay ahead. Without warning, the ship lurched violently, caught in the sudden grip of a gravitational surge. Alarms blared, and the console flashed red with warnings. Time seemed to stretch as Lyra faced a harrowing choice: attempt a risky maneuver to break free, or take the safer, longer route and risk losing whatever precious time she had left. Instinct took over. She angled the ship sharply, pushing the engines to their limit. The hull groaned in protest, but the gamble paid off. She slipped free of the surge's pull. Yet the victory came at a cost. The navigation system sparked and flickered, leaving her adrift in the vast expanse. And then the whispers returned, louder than before, their tones now laced with an unmistakable sense of urgency, as if they were trying to guide her towards something, or someone, she couldn't yet see. Lyra's ship shuddered as it touched down on the jagged surface of the asteroid, a desolate rock, drifting silently in the shadow of the Whispering Nebula. The damage to her vessel was worse than she'd hoped, and the tools she needed for repairs were scattered across the cargo hold. Stepping out into the eerie stillness, she scanned the barren landscape, her boots crunching against the asteroid's dusty surface. It felt like the edge of nowhere, until a figure emerged from the shadows. Cale was lean, his face half hidden beneath a scavenger's hood, but his sharp eyes gleamed with curiosity and something else, something guarded. "You're not the only one who's had a rough day out here," he said, his tone casual but edged with purpose. He gestured to her ship. "Need a hand with that?" "I've got tools, and I've been around these parts long enough to know a thing or two about the nebula." Lyra hesitated, her hand instinctively brushing against the star crystal tucked in her belt. It was rare, valuable, and she wasn't about to let it go without a fight. But the broken ship wasn't going to fix itself, and time was running out. "What's your price?" she asked, her voice steady but wary. Cale's gaze flicked to the faint glow of the crystal. "That," he said simply, "you won't miss it too much, and in return, I'll make sure you're back in the stars before the nebula devours this rock hole." It was an uneasy bargain, but Lyra didn't have much choice. Reluctantly, she nodded, though her instincts screamed to keep her distance. As they worked side by side, Cale's occasional comments about the nebula's secrets piqued her curiosity, but it was his mention of her brother that sent a chill down her spine. "Heard you've got family out here," Cale said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Funny how the nebula seems to attract the ones with something to hide." Lyra's hands stilled on the repair panel. "What do you know about my brother?" she demanded, her voice low and urgent. Cale shrugged, his expression unreadable. "Just that the nebula doesn't let go of what it takes. If he's out there, you'd better move fast, if it's not already too late." The words hung in the air like a shadow, and Lyra felt the weight of them pressing against her chest. Cale's cryptic remarks were more than just idle chatter. They were a warning, but whether he was an ally or a threat, she couldn't yet tell. For now, she kept her guard up, her eyes on the nebula's shifting glow as it loomed ever closer, whispering secrets she was determined to unravel. As Lyra and Cale drifted deeper into the heart of the nebula, the once serene expanse transformed into a treacherous maze of floating debris. Shattered remnants of ancient stars and swirling fragments of cosmic dust surrounded their vessel, creating a chaotic obstacle course. The whispers, once melodic and soothing, now hissed and crackled with urgency, their fragmented tones warning of unseen dangers. Lyra tightened her grip on the ship's controls, her brow furrowing as she deciphered the disorienting messages. "Something's wrong," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. The whispers, "They're trying to tell us we're heading straight into a collision." With a deep breath, she closed her eyes and summoned her star-weaving abilities, her hands glowing faintly as she channeled the energy of the cosmos. The ship's path shifted subtly, weaving through the debris with an almost miraculous precision. Yet, the strain was immense. Every twist and turn drained her, beads of sweat forming on her forehead as the weight of the effort pressed down on her. Cale watched her intently, his usual calm demeanor tinged with something harder to define. There was admiration in his gaze, yes, but also a quiet intensity, a look that lingered just a little too long, as if he were seeing her for the first time, or perhaps seeing something more. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice steady but carrying an edge of concern that felt more weighted than usual. Lyra nodded weakly, though her trembling hands betrayed her exhaustion. "I'll be fine," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "We just need to get through this." As they cleared the last of the debris, the whispers softened, their chaotic tones fading into a low, rhythmic hum. Yet the unease lingered, not just in the nebula's shifting energy, but in the air between them, heavy with unspoken questions and an intensity neither of them dared to address. As Lyra's ship glides deeper into the heart of the Whispering Nebula, something shifts. The stars around her seem to blur, their light bending in ways that defy logic. Suddenly, the ship is pulled into a hidden pocket, a place where time and space twist and fold like the delicate threads of a spider's web. Here, everything feels wrong. Moments stretch into eternities, while seconds vanish in the blink of an eye. And then she sees him, her brother. His face flickers before her like a half-remembered dream, his voice echoing softly, calling her name. But just as quickly as he appears, he's gone, leaving her heart aching and her mind racing. Cale, ever the enigmatic presence, watches her silently. When Lyra presses him for answers, he hesitates, his usually confident demeanor faltering. "I've been here before," he admits, his voice low and heavy with something unspoken. But when she asks what he saw, what he felt, he clams up, his eyes darting away as if the memories themselves are too dangerous to revisit. Desperate for answers and driven by the haunting glimpse of her brother, Lyra makes a bold decision. Drawing on her star-weaving abilities, she tries to stabilize the chaotic pocket of the nebula, weaving the distorted strands of space and time back into some semblance of order. But the effort is immense. The energy required drains her, leaving her gasping for breath, her body trembling as the nebula seems to push back, resisting her touch. In that moment, a strange realization dawns on her. The nebula doesn't feel like a passive force of nature. It feels alive, sentient, as if it's watching her, testing her, perhaps even communicating in ways she doesn't yet understand. The thought sends a shiver down her spine, but it also ignites a spark of hope. If the nebula is alive, then maybe, just maybe, it holds the key to finding her brother. As the duo approached the derelict space station, its imposing silhouette loomed against the backdrop of a dying star, its faint light casting eerie shadows across the metallic hull. The station, once a hub of activity, now floated in silence, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. Lyra's pulse quickened as she stepped inside, her boots echoing through the hollow corridors. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her, a sense of urgency driving her forward. In a dimly lit control room, she stumbled upon a series of logs left behind by her brother. His voice, though crackling with static, felt startlingly alive. He spoke of the Whispering Nebula, not as a force to be conquered, but as a living entity in need of understanding. His words carried a mix of wonder and regret, hinting at a catastrophic event that had set the nebula on its path of unraveling. Lyra's heart ached as she listened, realizing her brother had been closer to solving the mystery than anyone had known. But the logs raised more questions than answers. What had gone wrong, and why had he kept this from her? Her thoughts turned to Cale, who had been unusually quiet since they boarded the station. His evasive demeanor, once a minor annoyance, now felt like a barrier she couldn't ignore. She found him in the observation deck, staring out at the dying star, his expression unreadable. "Cale," she began, her voice steady but firm. "We've come too far for half-truths. What aren't you telling me?" He hesitated, his gaze still fixed on the star. "Some things are better left buried," he muttered, but Lyra wasn't having it. "Not when they're tied to everything we're fighting for." She shot back, stepping closer. "I need to know the truth." Cale finally turned to face her, his eyes shadowed with guilt. "Fine," he said, his voice low. "I was part of an expedition, years ago. We thought we could harness the nebula's energy, but we underestimated its power. Something went wrong. something we didn't anticipate. The explosion, it set everything into motion. I thought I could make it right by helping you, but now, his words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken regret. Lyra felt a surge of anger, but also a flicker of understanding. They were both bound by the same mistakes, the same desire to fix what had been broken. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, they were truly in it together. The station trembled violently as the dying star unleashed a catastrophic surge of energy, its blinding light flooding the corridors. Lyra and Cale barely had a moment to react. "We need to move now," Cale shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening roar. Lyra's hands flew into motion, her star-weaving abilities instinctively weaving threads of stardust into a shimmering barrier around them. The shield held, deflecting the deadly radiation, but the strain was immense. Her vision blurred, her knees buckled, and darkness swallowed her before she could even register hitting the floor. In the depths of unconsciousness, Lyra found herself floating in a sea of stars, her surroundings both familiar and surreal. A figure emerged from the mist, her brother, Eden. His presence was warm but urgent. "You're at a turning point, Lyra," he said, his voice echoing like a distant melody. "The nebula is shifting, and its core holds the key. But tread carefully. This path will test you like never before." Before she could ask more, the dream dissolved, leaving her with a lingering sense of foreboding. When Lyra's eyes fluttered open, she was greeted by the dim glow of the station's emergency lights and Cale's concerned face. "You've been out for a while," he said, relief softening his tone. "Whatever you did back there saved us, but it took a lot out of you." As she sat up, still groggy, Cale hesitated before speaking again. "I think I know where we need to go." "The core of the nebula. It's been calling to me, but getting there won't be easy. The path is treacherous, filled with dangers even I can't predict." Lyra's mind raced, the dream's warning echoing in her thoughts. This was the turning point Eden had spoken of. She nodded, determination firming her resolve. "Then we'll face it together. Whatever's out there, we'll find a way." Cale's expression shifted, a flicker of admiration breaking through his usual stoicism. "If anyone can navigate this chaos, it's you," he said. The two stood, their next steps clear, though the unknown loomed large before them. As the pair ventures deeper into the heart of the Whispering Nebula, the once faint murmurs swell into a deafening chorus. Every whisper carries a fragment of something profound, snatches of laughter, echoes of sorrow, the weight of emotions long buried. Lyra pauses, her breath catching as she realizes the truth. This isn't just a cloud of dust and light. It's a living, breathing archive of stories lost to time. Each voice is a piece of someone's history, a memory that refuses to fade. Cale, however, seems to crumple under the weight of it all. His face tightens, his hands trembling as the voices press in around him. For the first time, Lyra sees the guilt he's been carrying, the knowledge that his actions, his mistakes, have brought this ancient sanctuary to the brink of collapse. It's written in the way he avoids her gaze, in the way his voice falters when he speaks, and as the whispers grow louder, so does his despair. In a moment of raw vulnerability, Cale nearly breaks. He reaches for a control panel, his fingers hovering over the switch that could end their mission before it's complete. But Lyra steps in, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling around them. "You can't run from this," she says, her words cutting through the chaos. Not anymore. Yet even as she reaches out to him, the tension between them doesn't fully dissipate. Cale's guilt lingers like a shadow, and Lyra's patience wears thin. They're so close to the core, to unearthing the secrets the nebula has guarded for eons, but the weight of their shared history threatens to pull them apart. The question isn't just whether they can restore the nebula, it's whether they can heal the cracks in their own fragile alliance. As Lyra ventured deeper into the heart of the Whispering Nebula, the air, or what passed for air in this ethereal expanse, seemed to hum with a strange, pulsating energy. It was as if the very fabric of the cosmos was alive, breathing, and aware of her presence. At the core, where the light and shadow danced in a mesmerizing swirl, she came face to face with something beyond comprehension. A sentient entity, vast and ancient, materialized before her. Its form shifted like the nebula itself, a living embodiment of the cosmic expanse that surrounded them. The entity's voice was not a sound, but a resonance that echoed within her very soul. It spoke of the nebula's unraveling, a process that had been set in motion long before Lyra's arrival. And then it revealed the truth she had been searching for. Her brother, the one she had crossed galaxies to find, had made the ultimate sacrifice. He had given himself to delay the nebula's collapse, knowing that his time would buy the universe precious moments of stability. The weight of that revelation struck her like a comet, leaving her breathless, but the entity's message did not end there. To restore balance, to mend what was broken, Lyra would have to merge her essence with the nebula's consciousness. It was not a choice without cost. Such a union would come with a price. Her life. The gravity of the decision hung in the air, a silent question that demanded an answer. Cale, who had stood by her side through every trial, stepped forward. His voice was steady, but laced with urgency. "Let me take your place," he offered, his words a testament to the bond they had forged. Lyra's response was immediate, resolute. She shook her head, her gaze unwavering. "This is my burden to bear," she said softly. "My brother gave everything to protect what he loved. I won't let his sacrifice be in vain." Her determination was a flame that could not be extinguished, a testament to the strength she had discovered within herself. Cale, though reluctant, understood. He had seen her courage, her resilience, and he knew that this was a path she had to walk alone. In that moment, the nebula seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The choice was hers, and the consequences would ripple across the stars. Yet, as Lyra stood there, her resolve unwavering, she knew that this was not just about saving the universe. It was about honoring a legacy, about finding meaning in the face of loss. And with that, she took a step forward, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Lyra took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reached out to the swirling energy of the Whispering Nebula. The moment her fingertips brushed against its luminous currents, a surge of power coursed through her, and suddenly, she was no longer in the cosmic void. She was back in the past, standing on the edge of that fateful precipice, her brother's face etched with determination and despair. His eyes met hers one last time, filled with a sorrow so profound it felt like a weight pressing against her chest. She could see the exact moment he made his choice, the moment he sacrificed himself to save the nebula, to save her. The memory was vivid, raw, and unrelenting, as if it had been waiting for her to face it all over again. The entity's voice echoed in her mind, calm yet urgent. Your fear of loss is a barrier, Lyra. It tethers you to the past, to guilt that is not yours to carry. If you cannot release it, the merging will fail. Lyra's breath hitched, her heart pounding as the weight of those words settled over her. She had always blamed herself for his death, for not being strong enough, for not stopping him. But now, standing in the heart of the nebula, she realized she had been clinging to that guilt like a shield, a way to keep his memory alive, even if it meant carrying the pain forever. The entity's presence pressed closer, its energy wrapping around her like a gentle but insistent embrace. Grief is not a chain, it whispered. It is a bridge. To honor those we've lost, we must learn to walk forward, not backward. Tears welled in Lyra's eyes as she looked into the nebula's swirling depths. She saw her brother's face again, but this time it was softer, filled with warmth rather than despair. She could almost hear his voice, a quiet reassurance. Let go, it seemed to say. Let me be at peace. In that moment, Lyra made her choice. She closed her eyes, allowing the grief to wash over her, not as a burden, but as a final farewell. She whispered his name, her voice trembling but resolute, and felt something shift within her. A release, a surrender. The weight she had carried for so long began to dissolve, replaced by a quiet, steady strength. The entity's energy surged around her, brighter now, more harmonious. You are ready, it said, its voice a blend of solemnity and hope. Lyra opened her eyes, her resolve firm, and reached out once more to the nebula. This time, the merging didn't feel like a battle. It felt like coming home. As the merging reached its crescendo, the air around Cale and Lyra hummed with the nebula's immense energy. The stars above seemed to dim, as if the cosmos itself was holding its breath. But just as the final threads of unity wove together, a sudden disturbance shattered the tranquility. A rival faction, drawn by the nebula's power and intent on claiming it for themselves, emerged from the shadows like hunters closing in on their prey. Armed with advanced technology and driven by greed, they launched a swift and brutal assault. Cale, ever the protector, stepped between Lyra and the oncoming threat. His mind raced, drawing on years of studying the nebula's patterns and secrets. With a calm precision, he manipulated the swirling energies around them, creating barriers and redirecting the faction's attacks. The nebula responded to his commands, as if it too recognized the danger and lent its strength to his defense. Each move was a dance of strategy and instinct, a testament to Cale's deep connection to this celestial force. Meanwhile, Lyra, still intertwined with the nebula's ancient entity, felt the surge of energy coursing through her. The rival faction's intrusion disrupted the delicate balance, forcing her to act. She raised her hands, and the nebula's light poured through her, a radiant shield against the attackers. The energy she channeled was overwhelming, a torrent of power that sent the faction reeling. But the cost was steep. As she unleashed the nebula's might, she felt her grip on reality begin to slip. The world around her blurred, the boundaries between her mind and the cosmos dissolving into a chaotic haze. Cale noticed the strain on Lyra's face and knew something was wrong. He shouted her name, but his voice seemed distant, muffled by the growing dissonance in her thoughts. Lyra fought to maintain control, but the effort was tearing her apart, fragmenting her connection to the very reality they sought to save. The nebula's power was both a gift and a burden, and in that moment, the line between salvation and destruction grew perilously thin. As Lyra floats within the vast expanse of the Whispering Nebula, her thoughts begin to blur, merging the nebula's ancient consciousness with the scattered fragments of her own life. It's as though time itself has unraveled, pulling her into a kaleidoscope of memories. She sees herself as a child, small and wide-eyed, lying on a grassy field under a night sky ablaze with stars. The wonder in her young heart is palpable, a pure, unbroken connection to the cosmos that once felt infinite. Then the scene shifts. She's older now, standing in a dimly lit room, her voice trembling with frustration as she argues with her brother. "You're taking too many risks," she insists, her fear for him spilling over into anger. His calm defiance only deepens her worry, and the memory lingers like a shadow, unresolved and heavy. The nebula's presence gently intertwines with her thoughts, its voice a soft echo in her mind. "You carry these moments not as burdens, but as keys," it whispers. "To heal the cosmos, you must first heal yourself." Lyra feels a surge of emotion as the entity guides her to confront these memories, not with regret, but with understanding. Her journey isn't just about saving the nebula, it's about piecing together the fragments of her own story, finding meaning in the pain, and reclaiming the wonder she once felt under those stars. As she begins to reconcile these experiences, a sense of clarity emerges. The nebula's shimmering tendrils seem to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, a silent acknowledgement of the connection between her inner world and the vast, starlit expanse surrounding her. As the swirling chaos of the nebula begins to subside, Lyra steps forward, her form radiating a soft, ethereal glow. The starlight clings to her like a second skin, a testament to the transformation she has just undergone. Around her, the once turbulent whispers of the nebula shift, now forming a gentle, harmonious hum that resonates through the cosmos. It's as if the very fabric of the universe has found its balance, a soothing melody replacing the cacophony of before. Nearby, Cale struggles to rise, his armor battered and his body bearing the scars of the fierce battle. Yet, his eyes meet Lyra's with a clarity that wasn't there before. "I saw your brother's courage in you," he says, his voice heavy with emotion but steady with resolve. "And I see now the weight of my own choices. I will atone for them, Lyra. I owe you that much and more." His words hang in the air, a promise as sincere as the stars themselves. For Lyra, the moment is bittersweet. She feels a profound peace settle over her, a quiet assurance that her brother's sacrifice was not in vain. The path she walked, fraught with challenges and heartache, has led her here, to a place of healing for herself and for the universe around her. The shimmering light that surrounds her seems to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, a reminder that even in the darkest reaches of space, there is hope, there is redemption, and there is light. As they approached the edge of the nebula, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The once harmonious whispers of the stars now carried a faint tremor, a subtle discord that tugged at her instincts. She paused, turning her gaze back to the swirling expanse of light and shadow. The entity's voice echoed softly in her mind, its tone tinged with urgency. The nebula's balance, it explained, was more fragile than it appeared. Without a guardian, this celestial haven could fall into chaos, threatening the delicate equilibrium of the cosmos. Cale stood silently beside her, his expression mirroring her unease. Lyra's heart wrestled with the weight of the decision before her. Part of her longed to stay, to immerse herself in the nebula's beauty and protect it as her brother once had. Yet, she knew her talents were needed elsewhere. Her role as a starweaver extended far beyond these shimmering borders. The nebula wasn't just a place, it was a symbol, a testament to the unity of the stars and the legacy of those who safeguarded them. With quiet determination, Lyra turned to Cale. Together, they began to weave a vision, an intricate network of starweavers, each trained to uphold the nebula's balance. It would be a collective effort, a tapestry of guardians bound by a shared purpose. This network would not only honor her brother's memory, but also ensure the nebula's light would endure for generations to come. As they finalized their plan, Lyra felt a glimmer of hope take root. The journey ahead would be challenging, but the stars had always guided her, and this time would be no different. As Lyra stepped onto the familiar soil of her homeworld, the air itself seemed to hum with recognition. Crowds gathered, their faces alight with awe and gratitude for the one who had ventured into the unknown and returned with tales of the stars. Cheers echoed like distant thunder, and petals rained from the skies, a celebration of the hero who had bridged their world with the mysteries of the cosmos. Yet, amidst the adoration, Lyra's thoughts were already turning to the future, to the legacy she could build from the whispers of the nebula that still lingered in her mind. With a quiet resolve, she founded the Starweavers Guild, a sanctuary for those who shared her vision of understanding and preserving the vast tapestry of the universe. Its halls became a nexus of knowledge, where scholars, dreamers, and wanderers gathered to unravel the secrets of the stars. Cale, ever by her side, found his purpose renewed. The weight of his past guilt, once a heavy chain, now fueled his dedication to the guild. Together, they recruited members, weaving a community bound not by duty, but by a shared curiosity and reverence for the cosmos. Yet, even as the guild flourished, Lyra's bond with the nebula remained unbroken. Its whispers, soft and insistent, followed her like a shadow, a reminder of the journey that had changed her forever. It was no longer a distant enigma, but a part of her, a silent companion that guided her steps and inspired her work. In quiet moments, when the guild's halls were still, she would close her eyes and listen, feeling the pull of the stars as they beckoned her to explore still further. The nebula's secrets were vast, and though she had returned home, its call was a promise that her journey was far from over. Months drifted by like whispers in the void, a calm interlude in Lyra's journey through the stars. But the universe rarely stays silent for long. One evening, as she charted the celestial currents, a faint yet urgent signal pierced the quiet, a distress call from a star system on the edge of oblivion. Its sun, once a beacon of life, now teetered on the brink of collapse, its light flickering like a dying ember. The message was clear: time was running out. Lyra knew she couldn't face this alone. Gathering a team of seasoned starweavers, she reached out to Cale, whose courage and skill had proven invaluable before. Together, they prepared to venture into the unknown, their mission carrying not just the weight of this star's fate, but also a reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. The cosmos, vast and unpredictable, demanded unity, a harmony of minds and hearts to confront the threats that loomed in the darkness. As they set their course toward the fading star, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that this journey would test them in ways they hadn't yet imagined. As Lyra ventured deeper into the heart of the Whispering Nebula, a startling revelation began to unfold. The dying sun at the nebula's core wasn't just a beacon of fading light. It was the source of the nebula's growing instability. This connection struck her with both awe and urgency. The very essence of this cosmic region, with its swirling colors and haunting whispers, was tied to the sun's final breaths. It was a discovery that reshaped her understanding of the universe's delicate balance. The realization that her mission was far from over didn't weigh on her. Instead, it ignited a renewed sense of purpose. Lyra knew that the harmony of the nebula, and perhaps the cosmos itself, depended on what she decided to do next. She wasn't just an explorer anymore. She had become a guardian, carrying the wisdom of the nebula like a sacred torch. Its whispers, once mysterious, now felt like guidance, urging her to take action. Standing at the precipice of this new challenge, Lyra felt her resolve harden. The universe wasn't just vast and beautiful, it was fragile, its equilibrium held together by forces beyond full comprehension. And yet, she felt a quiet confidence. The nebula had chosen her, and she was ready to meet its call. With every step forward, she carried not just the weight of responsibility, but the hope of restoring balance to a corner of the cosmos that had begun to unravel. This was no longer just a mission. It was a testament to her courage and the enduring power of the stars. As the last surge of energy flowed from Lyra's hands into the heart of the sun, the chaotic storm of light and heat began to settle, like a tempest succumbing to a gentle breeze. The star, once on the brink of collapse, now glowed steadily, its warmth radiating through the void, but the cost was evident. Lyra slumped to her knees, her body trembling from the sheer exertion. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and her vision blurred as waves of exhaustion crashed over her. In that moment of stillness, her mind wandered to the sacrifices that had brought her here. She thought of her brother, whose bravery and sacrifice had set her on this path so long ago. His absence still ached, a hollow space in her heart that time had yet to fill. And then there was Cale, whose loyalty and determination had been a constant source of strength, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Their journeys, separate yet so deeply connected, had all led to this moment of triumph. Lyra realized that she had never been alone, not truly. Their spirits, their choices, their lives had woven a tapestry that now guided her forward. The whispers of the nebula returned, softer now, almost like a lullaby. They spoke not of urgency or mystery, but of peace and reassurance. "You are never without guidance," they murmured. "Even in silence, the stars will light your way." Lyra closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she allowed herself to rest, to reflect, to simply be. The path ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity. She was ready to take the next step, wherever it might lead. As Lyra stepped back into the heart of the Whispering Nebula, she found it transformed. No longer a place of chaos and despair, but a sanctuary of serenity. The swirling clouds of stardust now shimmered with a soft, calming glow, as if the cosmos itself had exhaled in relief. Here, in this newfound tranquility, she felt the weight of her journey settle into something quieter, more enduring. Her eyes scanned the expanse, and in that moment, she knew what she had to do. With her brother's memory cradled in her heart, Lyra reached into her satchel and pulled out a star crystal, its surface pulsing faintly with a gentle light. She knelt at the nebula's core, pressing the crystal into the stardust below. It was more than a gesture, it was a promise, a vow to protect this place, to ensure it remained a haven for all who sought solace among the stars. As the crystal took root, its light spread in delicate tendrils, weaving into the fabric of the nebula. It was as if her brother's spirit had found a home here, forever intertwined with the cosmos he once loved. Cale stood beside her, his presence steady and silent. His loyalty, once questioned, now felt as unshakable as the stars themselves. Together, they gazed at the nebula, its beauty a testament to the trials they had endured. "We'll keep it safe," Cale said softly, his voice carrying the weight of a shared purpose. Lyra nodded, her resolve unwavering. Their bond, forged in the fires of redemption, had become a beacon of its own, a guiding light in the vastness of the universe. In that moment, they made a silent pact, to stand as guardians of the cosmos, not just for themselves, but for all who would come after. The nebula, once a place of whispers and shadows, now stood as a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the universe, light could prevail. And as Lyra and Cale turned to leave, the nebula's gentle hum seemed to echo their promise, carried on the currents of stars for eternity. Years had woven their way through the cosmos, and Lyra, once a young stargazer with a heart full of curiosity, now stood as the revered leader of the Starweavers Guild. Her journey had transformed her, and the guild she once dreamed of was now a testament to her unwavering dedication. The Whispering Nebula, once a place of chaos and despair, had become a radiant beacon of balance and harmony. Its whispers, once filled with sorrow, now carried a tone of gratitude, a quiet thank you to the one who had listened and acted with courage. But the stars, as ever, held more than just light. A new challenge loomed on the horizon, a shadow creeping across the galaxy, threatening to unravel the peace Lyra had fought so hard to build. This time, though, she was not alone. The guild she led was a tapestry of skilled weavers, each thread a story, each member a testament to the power of unity. Lyra's wisdom, forged in the trials of her youth, guided her decisions. She knew the cosmos was not just a collection of stars, but a library of stories, each one waiting to be told, each one worth protecting. As she gazed into the endless expanse, Lyra felt the weight of her role, not as a burden, but as a calling. The stars above were not just distant lights. They were reminders of the countless lives intertwined with hers, the journeys shared, and the battles fought. With her guild by her side, she stepped forward to face this new threat, knowing that every star in the sky held a legacy worth preserving. The Whispering Nebula had taught her that even the faintest voice could change the fate of the universe, and she was ready to listen once more. Lyra leaned back in the pilot's seat, her eyes fixed on the swirling hues of the nebula beyond her ship's viewport. its luminous tendrils stretched endlessly, alive with a soft, pulsating glow. The whispers, faint yet unmistakable, wove through the silence of the cabin like a song she'd known all her life. It wasn't just sound, it was warmth, a gentle embrace from the very heart of the cosmos. In that moment, she felt him. Her brother's presence lingered in the nebula's light, his memory as steady and guiding as the stars themselves. His sacrifice had been a beacon, a star that burned brightly even in the darkest of times. She thought of how far she'd come, how much she'd lost, and yet how much she still had to discover. The universe was vast, its mysteries unending, but Lyra wasn't afraid. The nebula's whispers reminded her that even in the emptiness of space, there was always something waiting to be found, a spark, a glimmer, a promise of something more. As her ship drifted closer, the nebula seemed to hum in response, its light dancing in patterns that felt almost deliberate. It was as if the cosmos itself was speaking to her, urging her forward. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Lyra knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Her story, like the stars above, was still unfolding. And with every whisper, every shimmering thread of light, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The darkness was vast, but so was the light, and in that balance, Lyra found her hope, her resolve, and her path.